The picture was one of those that every family strives for. Taken in the autumn of 2010, it shows the Fried family, father Nick, mother Lisa, and their two sons, Tyler and Zach, posed together, smiling amidst the fiery reds and golds of the fall foliage. They looked like the epitome of the American dream, a testament to a life built on hard work, love, and suburban stability. Nick, 54, was a successful and respected engineer, a man of quiet intelligence and dry wit. Lisa, 53, was the vibrant heart of the home, a special education teacher's aide whose warmth and generosity touched everyone she met. Tyler, the older son, was off at college, carving his own path. And Zach, the younger one at 19, was the handsome, well-mannered boy who seemed to have it all. But the perfect portrait was a lie. Beneath the surface, hidden from the world and even from those closest to them, a festering darkness was about to erupt. On the morning of November 9, 2011, the idyllic facade of the Fried family's home in an affluent neighborhood of Montgomery, Ohio, was shattered by an act of such brutal violence it would leave the community reeling and force a reckoning with the question: how can the child you love and raise become your killer? To understand the end, one must first understand the beginning. Nick and Lisa Fried were, by all accounts, devoted parents. They had created a life of comfort and opportunity for their sons. Their home was a gathering place, filled with the sounds of laughter and the smell of Lisa's home-cooked meals. Nick was a provider, a man who had worked diligently to give his family the best. He was a car enthusiast, a lover of history, and a man who valued structure and achievement. Lisa was his perfect counterpart. Described by friends as the glue, she was endlessly supportive, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and anniversaries, who sent cards for no reason, who always had a kind word. Her work with special needs children was not just a job, it was a calling. She poured the same boundless love and patience into her students as she did into her own family. Zachary "Zach" Fried was the beneficiary of this love. He was a bright, athletic boy who played lacrosse and football at Sycamore High School, a highly competitive school in one of Cincinnati's top school districts. He was popular, good-looking, and from the outside, seemed to navigate the pressures of adolescence with ease. He was the good son, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who was always polite. But the pressure to maintain this image, to excel in a high-achieving environment, was immense. The Frieds, like many parents in their community, had high expectations. College was not an option. It was an expectation. Success was not a hope. It was a requirement. For Zach, this weight began to feel unbearable. Beneath the surface of the star athlete and good student, a different Zach was emerging. He started smoking marijuana heavily in high school. What began as recreational use quickly spiraled into a daily habit, a coping mechanism for anxiety and a growing sense of inadequacy. After graduating high school in 2010, he enrolled at the University of Cincinnati, but his drug use intensified, and his academic performance suffered. He was adrift, lacking direction, and the gap between who he was expected to be and who he felt he was, widened into a chasm. His parents were concerned, of course. They saw the signs of lethargy, the lack of motivation, the shift in his friends. They tried to help. They urged him to focus, to cut back on the partying, to find a path. They were firm, perhaps even strict, but their actions were born of love and fear for their son's future. They instituted rules: get a job, pay for your own car insurance, contribute to the household. To them, it was tough love. To Zach, it felt like oppression. The tension in the house became a palpable, unspoken fifth member of the family. Arguments, once rare, became more frequent. Nick and Lisa saw a son squandering his potential. Zach saw parents who couldn't, or wouldn't, understand the pressure he was under. He felt controlled, micromanaged, and suffocated. In his distorted perception, his parents were not trying to save him, they were the obstacle to his freedom. By the fall of 2011, Zach's life was unraveling. He had withdrawn from the University of Cincinnati. His drug use was a constant, expensive habit that he funded with a part-time job at a local restaurant and, allegedly, by selling marijuana himself. The rules his parents had set felt like chains. He was 19 years old, an adult, yet he was living under their roof and their rules. The resentment festered and grew toxic. He began to confide in a small circle of friends, spinning a narrative of his home life that was starkly different from the reality everyone else saw. He portrayed his parents as tyrants, controlling his every move, holding him back, and making his life miserable. He spoke of wanting out, of wanting to be free. He talked about his father with a particular venom, describing him as overly critical and impossible to please. In the weeks leading up to the murder, his thoughts took a dark and irreversible turn. He didn't just want to be free from his parents, he began to fantasize about being free of them permanently. The plan was not a spontaneous, heat-of-the-moment idea. It was cold, calculated, and meticulously planned. Prosecutors would later detail how Zach had been researching murder methods online. He had settled on using a firearm, a weapon he was familiar with from occasional target shooting with his father. The family kept several guns in the house, securely stored. Zach knew where they were and, crucially, he knew the combination to the safe. In the days before November 9th, he took a .22 caliber rifle from the safe. He test-fired it in the basement of his home to ensure it was in working order. He then waited for the right moment. That moment came on a seemingly ordinary Wednesday morning. Nick Fried had left for work early. Lisa was home, getting ready for her day as a teacher's aide at Montgomery Elementary School. The house was quiet. Zach came downstairs, the rifle in his hands. He found his mother in the kitchen, the heart of the home she had so lovingly curated. There was no final argument, no dramatic confrontation. As Lisa stood, unsuspecting, her son raised the rifle and shot her in the back. The single gunshot echoed through the silent house. Lisa Fried, the woman who had dedicated her life to nurturing children, fell to the floor, killed by her own. But Zach's plan was only half complete. He knew his father would be home for lunch, as he often was. He had to wait. For several hours, he moved through the house, stepping over his mother's body, waiting for his father to return. He later told a friend he played video games to pass the time, the surreal normalcy of the act highlighting the profound detachment from reality he was experiencing. Around noon, Nick Fried pulled into the driveway, expecting a quiet lunch with his wife. He walked through the garage and into the mudroom. He never made it to the kitchen. Zach was waiting for him. As his father entered, Zach opened fire, shooting him multiple times. Nick Fried, the engineer, the provider, the car enthusiast, fell dead in the entryway of the home he had built for his family. In a matter of hours, Zach Fried had executed both of his parents. The love and life that had created and sustained him had been extinguished by his own hand. The house, once filled with warmth, was now a tomb, occupied only by the dead and their killer. With the murders complete, Zach's focus shifted to concealment and escape. He cleaned up the crime scene, mopping up the blood, and moved his parents' bodies. He dragged his father's body to the garage and placed it in the family's Lexus SUV. He then carried his mother's body and placed it in the back of the same vehicle. He covered them with a tarp. His plan, investigators would later learn, was to drive the bodies to a remote location in Kentucky and dispose of them. He hoped to create a narrative that his parents had simply disappeared, vanishing without a trace. He then intended to use their credit cards and cash to fund a new life elsewhere. But first, he had to maintain the illusion that everything was normal. Later that afternoon, he picked up his girlfriend from work, acting as if it were just another day. He even stopped to get a sandwich, the mundane errand a stark contrast to the horrific acts he had committed hours earlier. The charade began to unravel with a single text message. That evening, Tyler, the older brother who was away at college, tried to call his parents. When he couldn't reach them, he grew concerned and texted Zach, "Have you heard from Mom or Dad? They aren't answering." Zach, cool and composed, replied with a lie that would become the cornerstone of his short-lived alibi. He texted back that he had seen them that morning and that they were acting weird. He suggested they might have taken a last-minute trip to a lake house the family owned in Indiana, a plausible, though unlikely, story. But Tyler wasn't satisfied. His parents were creatures of habit. They wouldn't just vanish without a word. His concern mounting, he contacted a family friend who lived nearby and asked them to check on the house. When the friend arrived, they found Zach at home, seemingly calm. The house appeared normal, though there was a faint smell of cleaning products. Zach stuck to his story, telling the friend that his parents had probably gone to the lake house after a minor argument. But the friend noticed something odd. Nick's car was still in the driveway, and his cell phone and wallet were inside the house. It made no sense. The friend's suspicion grew, and they called the police. When Montgomery police officers arrived at the Fried home just after 10 p.m. on November 9th, they were met with a scene that was unsettlingly normal, yet something felt profoundly wrong. Zach repeated his story to the officers, his demeanor described as strangely flat, detached. He was cooperative but showed no real concern for his missing parents. The officers, trained to notice incongruities, found several. The excessive smell of cleaning products, a fresh, wet spot on the carpet, and then, one officer noticed what appeared to be a small drop of blood on the floor. The investigation instantly shifted from a missing persons case to a potential crime scene. Police secured the house and began a more thorough search. It was in the garage that the horror was discovered. Peering into the windows of the Lexus SUV, an officer saw a foot protruding from under a tarp. The bodies of Nick and Lisa Fried were found in the vehicle, victims of a brutal homicide. Zach was immediately separated and taken to the police station for questioning. Initially, he stuck to his story, feigning ignorance. But the evidence was mounting against him. His internet search history, retrieved from his computer, revealed his chilling preparations, searches for how to kill someone, how to get away with murder, and how to dispose of a body. Confronted with the overwhelming evidence, his facade began to crack. After hours of interrogation, Zach Fried confessed. In a calm, emotionless monotone, he detailed the events of the day. The premeditation, the waiting, the shooting of his mother, the ambush of his father, the cleanup, and his plan to disappear. He told detectives that he killed his parents because he was sick of them controlling my life. He said he felt no remorse. The good son was gone, replaced by a cold-blooded killer who saw his parents not as loved ones, but as obstacles to be eliminated. The community of Montgomery was plunged into shock and grief. The friends were beloved. How could this have happened in their safe, affluent community? How could this come from within a family that seemed so perfect? The case became a local media sensation, a terrifying cautionary tale about the hidden struggles that can fester behind closed doors. Zach Fried was charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder. In the face of the overwhelming evidence, the confession, the internet searches, the physical evidence, his defense team had few options. In October 2012, just shy of a year after the murders, Zach stood before Judge Melba Marsh in a Hamilton County courtroom and pleaded guilty. The sentencing hearing was a gut-wrenching affair. The courtroom was packed with friends and family of the victims, there to witness the final chapter of the tragedy. Tyler Fried, now orphaned, addressed the court and his brother. His victim impact statement was a raw outpouring of pain, loss, and betrayal. "He was my little brother, and I loved him," Tyler said, his voice trembling. "But the person who did this is not my brother. My brother died with my parents that day." He spoke of the void left in his life, the loss of his parents' guidance and love, and the crushing burden of being the sole survivor of his family. He looked directly at Zach and told him, "You took everything from me." When it was Zach's turn to speak, he offered a brief, flat statement. "I just want to say I'm sorry for what I did," he said, showing no emotion. "I loved my parents." Judge Marsh was not moved. She saw through the hollow apology to the cold, calculated nature of the crimes. She sentenced Zach Fried to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 17 years for the use of a firearm and tampering with evidence. "The evil in this case is unspeakable," Judge Marsh said from the bench. "You executed your mother and your father in cold blood. There is no place in a civilized society for someone who would do such a thing." With the sentence passed, the legal case was closed. But the fundamental question remained: why? There was no history of severe abuse, no single traumatic event that could explain such a violent rupture. Psychologists who evaluated Zach pointed to a perfect storm of factors: the immense pressure to achieve, a possible underlying personality disorder, severe marijuana use that may have exacerbated latent mental health issues, and a profound narcissistic injury. He had built an identity as the victim, casting his parents as his persecutors. In his twisted logic, murder was not just an option, it was the only path to his liberation. The case of Zach Fried stands as one of the most chilling examples of filicide in modern American history. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about parenting, pressure, and the fragile nature of the human psyche. The smiling family in the autumn photo is a ghost now, a memory frozen in time, a heartbreaking reminder of the beautiful, terrible, and ultimately unknowable dynamics that exist within a family. The house in Montgomery stands as a silent witness, its story a permanent stain on the American dream, a tragedy born not from strangers in the night, but from the hand of the good son.